please stay with us as we come back to you for another discussion as well. Now we stay in the region. A 2-month-old fuel blockade by Al-Qaeda-linked terrorists has paralyzed the capital of Mali, raising concerns that the jihadists might try eventually to impose their rule on the West African country. Security analysts have said that the group, known as Jamaat Nusrat al-Islam wal Muslimin, which has been operating for months within 50 kilometers of Bamako, currently has neither the intention nor the military capability to seize the city of 4 million people, which it briefly attacked last year. But reports say that the JNIM strategy of gradually starving Bamako of fuel, forcing schools to shut and depriving businesses of diesel-generated electricity poses the gravest challenge yet to the military leaders who took power in 2021. According to reports, the jihadists' likely goal is to trigger another coup. It would be Mali's third since 2020, further depriving the country of a viable power center and allowing JNIM to amass more weapons and funds. Now we move on to Tanzania. Tanzanian President Samia Suluhu Hassan has been sworn in for a second term following a landslide victory in a disputed election that prompted deadly protests across the country. Hassan has taken the oath of office during a ceremony at a military base in the capital, Dodoma. The event was closed to the public following the violence that accompanied a vote in which the two main opposition challengers were barred from running. Meanwhile, tensions remain high in the commercial capital, Dar es Salaam. Following 3 days of election protests, shops were shuttered along nearly empty streets, with most people remaining at home. Now for this discussion, we welcome back Dr. Tolit Atiya. He's an African affairs expert, joins us live from Kampala, Uganda. Thank you very much, Doctor, for staying with us. Now looking at this news, what are the potential implications of President Samia Suluhu Hassan's second term, and how might this exclusion of opposition candidates in election affect the country's democratic legitimacy?
No, thank you once again.
Thank you.
Actually, the events in Tanzania have literally surprised everybody in the region. Tanzania is the only country since it attained its independence in 1961 that has been seen as an oasis of peace, if I can use that word. Because all the other countries neighboring Tanzania, DR Congo, Uganda, Kenya, have all had their fair share of crisis and affront to democracy and turmoil. This has not happened in Dar es Salaam. And I think this goes back or brings to mind what the theorists of peace label as the levels of peace. Some have argued that, for instance, the absence of war does not mean that there is actually peace. And I think this is exactly what has happened in Tanzania. We have seen a place, a polity, a geography, a country that has seemed so tranquil, so quiet. But many people who know the inside of Tanzania have always warned that something is simmering below. It's just like having a cup of porridge and you have this layer that forms on top, and you're lured to believe that the heat has been knocked out. That is not true. The events in Dar es Salaam clearly showed that, by the way, democracy is really akin and fused to social relations. In as long as people begin to feel that they are being trampled upon, they are being downtrodden. There are two statements that came out. The South African election observers, in their statement, clearly concluded that the events in Tanzania and what they saw was far away from a free and fair election. The European Union observers concluded the same way. And I think to add credence to this is the way the Tanzanian government responded. One thing they have done in this era of technology was to go and knock out the internet. In knocking out the internet, they believed that probably this cuts communication and disorients maybe the demonstrators. But what is very interesting, right from looking at demonstrations years back, say in the Arab Springs, has clearly showed that sometimes when community anger builds, like it has now done in Tanzania, especially where people's participation, opportunity to participate in democracy are being denied, you actually do not need to organize. You actually do not need leaders. What happens is that the riots are basically simultaneous. And there are very cunning ways in which this kind of demonstrations take place. Because we saw like in Egypt, in Algeria, in Tunisia, people resorted to neutral areas like the churches, community halls, and continued. And why am I saying this? I would want to think that the curfew that has been called in Dar es Salaam, the knockout of the internet, which are the first victims of affront to democracy, may not necessarily deter, the anger and the spirit to revolt. I think we are yet to see more in the capital, Dar es Salaam, and the other capitals of Tanzania. What does this mean for the neighboring countries, Uganda and Tanzania? I mean, Uganda and Kenya. We already know that Tanzania has closed its nearest border of Namanga with Kenya, because with the events that happened in Kenya recently, the youth in Kenya are still hot in pursuit for any peace credentials. So I am sure they have linked up with the Tanzanian youth in one way or the other. Suluhi, wherever she is, even after swearing in, she must be very wary. What does this portend for Uganda? We are going into an election that is highly charged in January, and my guess is as good as yours.
Right.
We could just have another scene of riots in Uganda.
Thank you very much. With that, I would like to thank Dr. Tolit Atia for joining us as an African affairs expert and sharing that insight throughout our news. Thank you very much. Now we move on to our next news. According to a report by the Confederation of Zimbabwe Industries, Zimbabwe's annual inflation rate could halve from current levels by the end of 2025. Driven by a stable local currency supported by high gold prices, annual inflation in Zimbabwe measured in the Zimbabwe gold currency fell sharply to 32.7% in October from 82.7% in September, as per CCI. This projection is attributed to negative month-on-month inflation in recent months and a stable Zimbabwe's gold currency bolstered by surging gold prices. As per SOM, gold production in Zimbabwe is forecasted to surpass the record 38.4 tons achieved in 2024, driven by high bullion prices.